Hello, everyone, and thank you for tuning in to Help for HDTV. Today, we have a very special guest with us, Jolie, and we are actually going to do quite a few shows with Jolie, but today we are going to focus on just getting to know Jolie a little bit better and about her story, and then talking about her childhood is what we'll talk about today. So welcome to the show, Jolie. Thank you so much for coming on with us today.
Hi, thank you for having me.
If you could just tell us your background to your story.
Okay. My name's Jolie Hatfield, and I'm currently living in Jackson, Mississippi. I'm from Louisiana. I grew up all over Louisiana, so not one specific place, but I was born in Baton Rouge. I am a single mom to 7 kids. I am building a telecommunications business called Stormy Blessings Communications from scratch. I am currently a recovering drug addict of 4.5 years. And I was diagnosed at 24 genetically with genetic testing with Huntington's. I believe, if I'm not mistaken, I don't know the exact number, but it would be 34, 35. It's like right there over that line. I'm like 2 over the line. So it's actually kind of low. My mother, my grandmother had Huntington's. She was genetically tested. She died when I was 12. I grew up with her when I was younger, seeing her and how she was, not being able to talk and walk and stuff. My mother never got genetically tested, but she did have Huntington's. I grew up taking care of her. I was her only caretaker until she died. I was 24 when she died. She started showing signs of it now that I think about everything that I know. I remember as a kid, mental issues. She's very abusive to us, never stable, pushed everybody away in her life because she isolated herself. She isolated us. We all left at very young ages. Like it just was never stable. I remember just wondering, and I look at it now like, why didn't somebody just step in and help us? To be honest with you, it was quite bad. She was just abusive. She was emotionally distant. She was a very strong person. It was normal for us to see our mom fighting and put her hands on us. And it was normal not to have food in the house, and it was just normal to not have lights or anything like that. She started actually having to go to the hospital for congestive heart failure. She never got any kind of mental help. Never, ever, any kind. I think she took Paxil for a little while until so she went into the nursing home. And that was at the very end. The only reason she allowed them to put her on any medicine was because she tried to suffocate her roommate. Growing up with my nana, I guess I thought that I didn't associate. Well, of course I didn't. I was a child, but my nana or my grandma, she wasn't a mean person. She was a very sweet person, as much as you could have got to know her, because by the time I was old enough to know who she was, already not able to stand up on her own. She was jumping all the time. She was unable to speak except for mumbling words. My mama helped take care of her, and she died when I was 12. And I was like 11 and a half. It was in 2000. And then I know I saw my mama, and I just knew my mama was sick. I don't know how I knew it, but I knew it. I even knew I had it. That's what the doctors told me, that I had it. I think it's because I fall in my sleep, and I've always done that. And I have problems when I've eaten, with my stomach contractions and stuff, and looking like I have hiccups to go in public and eat. I have depression, and what they said, that the concentration, and I actually have ADHD, which actually could relate directly back to Huntington's. But like, I'm a hyper person. Like, I never sit still. I'm really full of life and stuff. And my mama was too. And she just kept getting sicker, and she started jumping more, and she wouldn't go to the doctor for it. It was really hard to get my mama to even go to the doctor for the congestive heart failure. Nobody ever stepped in. They knew she was sick, and I have 6 older brothers. My dad has 4, not my mom. My mom has 2 boys. That's the 2 oldest boys of my mom. My brother is a narcissist in the biggest way, and I don't mean that like he had tried to control me when I was younger, and I couldn't handle it. So I am the youngest and the only girl from the 2 parents and all of them. And so my brothers left home when my mom started getting sick. So Gavin was 10 years older than me, so I would have been. He left when he actually had a baby and got married when he was like 17, 18-ish. So I would have been 7, 8, or something like that. And then Drew was there. Drew's 6 years older than me. So Drew left at 17-ish But before he did, he had dropped out of school. He has dyslexia. He had dropped out of school. He was actually taking care of us while he working in the cane fields, like 14, 15 years old. There was because my brother's dad died and she got a social security check for the both of them. And so that's the only reason why we most of the time ever had any kind of money. So whenever they left, there was no money at all. There was nothing. My dad didn't pay child support, and he wasn't even in the picture at all. He just dug my mama's off as being crazy and left it alone. So it was just my mama really wasn't like I remember a couple guys she dated. She married this one dude that it turned out to be a complete jerk. Can I say that?
Yeah.
And
Say whatever you want. Yeah.
I just remember whoever she was with, though, she would fight all the time with them. My mom and me got into this really big fight when I was 13, 12 or 13. And it was actually literally a fist fight. And it's the only times I ever just really put my hands on my mama. But she was, she just was, I couldn't take it anymore. And I just exploded. I was a very explosive person. It was always something when I was at school, I was always worried about home. And when I was at home, I was just always stressed out where we're going to eat that night, where we're going to sleep that night, whether we're going to have food, lights, whether my mom was going to have cigarettes so I didn't have to get something thrown at my head, that kind of stuff, coffee. And so we ended up getting into this fight, and then DHS was called, and they told my mom in order for her not to go to jail, she would have to leave. So she decided to go to Florida where my other uncle was, my other two uncles. My nana had 5 kids. She had 4 that were her biological kids, and they adopted one daughter inside of the same family. 2 of my mom's brothers, one of them committed suicide. He had 2 things happen in his life at one time. He found out he was positive, and he also received an indictment papers for something that he'd done to me. So he committed suicide. That happened like back to back. That's my understanding of it. I don't know. I was like 14. She moved to Florida when all that happened, because we were actually living in a 2-bedroom trailer in a camper with 8 other people in our family at that point in time. It was the last time we all lived together. My 2 older brothers, me, my sister-in-law, and my niece and my nephew, and then her brothers. We were all young. And so she wanted me to come move to Florida with her. So I moved to Florida, and within 6 months, she broke her foot. My mama was in a car wreck whenever she could never drive. Let me tell you that right now. My mama wrecked every single car she ever bought. Anybody ever bought her. A car wreck almost completely killed her. She almost lost her life to a car wreck. She saw some kind of a bird flying over, I don't know, something that's not supposed to fly was supposed to be flying while she was going down this old back road in Louisiana doing 70 miles an hour. And she wrapped a Mustang around her legs, and she came out with pins and stuff holding her knees, and like it was pretty bad. She was in a wheelchair for I think almost a year. That's before I was born. It was Drew, my brother Ledger, I think he was like a month or 2 old. He wasn't very old. Because I remember hearing her talk about having to take care of the baby. And Gavin is ADHD and he never sits still. She's like, I literally used to want to just tape him to a chair. And I understand that, not literally, but she didn't do it. I have a child that's ADHD, so I can literally understand that. I wouldn't do it. So my mama had weak bones in her ankles. So whenever I ended up moving to Florida and she had this nice apartment and stuff, she ended up fracturing her foot on the side because she had to walk like this on her foot. She fractured the side of her foot. She decided she wanted to be a cook at a huddle house. And so my mama had swelling and a lot of pain, and she couldn't focus for very long. And a lot of stuff going on around her made her very agitated very quickly. And so I just never understood, why did you want to try to be a cook at Waffle House? But I was a kid. So we lost our apartment, and we went to go stay at Catholic Charities. We stayed there for about 9 months. And so it actually was okay. I was used to staying in shelters and stuff, so it wasn't that big of a deal to me. And we were in Panama City, and I really loved it up there. We were doing good. And then we got this low income apartment, and she got a job at Nextel, and she started having heart attacks. This is when I started becoming her caregiver. So she goes to the hospital, and they put my mom in the hospital. Now I'm 13 years old, and she has no vehicle. I'm riding a bike. I have no family up there because my mom's her baby brother, when my uncle committed suicide, or when all that stuff happened with me and him coming in the apartment and that happening, everybody in the family stopped talking to us because my uncle was the golden boy. And so it was like they didn't my mom was the one that always started the drama. My mama was the drama. My mama's birthday was 9/11. So yeah, the hell. So they didn't really, nobody really believed me. Yeah, I wasn't the only, honestly, I wasn't the only one. There was another little girl before it happened with me. That was like a family secret because it happened like a year before that happened with him and me. So nobody else, my only other uncles and they didn't have anything to do with us. He didn't talk to us. So I was alone in Florida by myself at 13 years old. They turned the lights off. She had no peace. She had no happiness. She just was there. And so she got out of the hospital. We had no lights. We had no food. We were losing our apartment because we hadn't been able to pay even the little bit of rent that we had to pay because she had lost her job at Nextel. It just because she had already taken up sick time from being sick. And so we were in Florida and I had to, this is one of the things where my mama didn't protect me. She couldn't. I had to, my brother wouldn't even pick up the phone for my mom at this point because of what my mama had done to me in Louisiana. Nobody would talk to her. Nobody would answer the phone. They were tired of helping her. My mom sent me with the neighbors across the breezeway because we were in Florida to Natchez, Louisiana, on a night trip with them down to Natchez so that my brother could come pick me up because he said he'd come pick me up. I talked to him. I finally got an answering phone. He said, I'll come get you from Natchez, but I'm not coming to get my mom. I don't care if I don't care. And I was like, okay, Gavin, he's hated mama and he's got his own reasons too. And I'm quite sure I remember waking up seeing blood on the walls. Yeah. So he's got many issues with that, her. So I go down to Natchez and end up being not convinced, coerced, talked into being with this grown man at 13 years old. I was actually ended up getting drunk. We ended up getting there at like 7:30 in the morning and I ended up getting drunk and ended up in the bedroom with this dude that's like 30 something years old. Never met before in my life, but my mom, there was nobody there. My dad wasn't in the picture. My older brother didn't know I was there quite yet. So it just was, there was nobody there to protect me at all. Nobody. I didn't know anybody. I didn't even really even know the neighbors. I met them a couple of times and they just happened to, I used their phone and she heard what happened and she offered it. And it wasn't her, it was her husband and his cousin and all them. Yeah. So it was only one there. I see the family generational curses now that I have kids happening at the same time. My kids were in DHS. Some of my kids were in DHS's custody for 6 years. And I believe that because of everybody's, why do you keep having kids? And I can understand that. But and my son was molested. I don't know if I can say that on YouTube or whatever, but my son was molested while he was in custody. And he's not. And he's struggling with his identity due to that. You see a lot of it repeating itself. My 3 youngest kids I had with my ex. The only reason I got pregnant with my little girl after I found out, which is my 6-year-old, because I just wanted that family. And I got a family. Definitely got a family. And I love my children. And it is very, very hard to look at my kids right now and know what I've done to them.
Oh, Jolie. There's so much to unpack. There's just so much to unpack. And it's unfortunate, but also somewhat common, that generational trauma, that or even addiction or abuse or the things that you don't realize that happened to you as a child, right? You don't even have the time to process them to then make the best decisions as an adult. Like I have been through a lot in my childhood, and then to process it all, I'm processing it now. I've already had my kids, they're older, and I'm just now processing. So it's just this whole thing of like generational trauma or generational situations or things that happen. It ends up happening generation after generation because there isn't enough time to realize what even happened and process it and do, at least that's what I'm seeing as a common thread. That this has been super intense. And I know that we have a lot more to dive into with you. And we would love to do that because there's right now, there's just so many different things that people aren't willing to talk about that are so important to talk about.
There's so much I want to dive into with this.
Yeah.
And so I think that, like Katrina said, there's so much we can dive into with Jolie. And I really feel just starting this first show that Jolie is going to be able to help so many people. Her courage to even be able to do this isn't easy what she's doing, but I think she also realizes there's people out there that have gone through the same struggles as her And she wants you to know you're not alone. And she's telling her story, help people, and also to tell her mom's story kind of in her own way. And thank you for doing that and having the courage to do that with us. I think we definitely want to talk about more about having kids at risk. We want to talk about more into what you talked about a little bit, dive a little bit deeper into how the world failed you, the mental health, children of someone who is sick with something like Huntington's, with neuropsychiatric features, homelessness, how you went so long without resources and light and food and running water and all these different things, these quality of life necessities, how your family went for so long undetected, and the system failed you. And that's supposed to protect people. And I am sorry for that, but this is where people have voices, they stand up. That's where the system hopefully gets better. Thank you so much for coming on with us today. And we definitely we'll have Jolie back very soon to talk about these different subjects. I think that'll do it for today. Don't forget to like this video and subscribe to the channel below, and then ring the bell for notifications to find out when more videos like this come out. Till next time.